Now, I don't know what you know about Freemasonry. I don't know if, a bit like me, you think you know a bit, but actually you know nothing at all. And in fact, the more you try to find out, the more confusing it becomes. Well, my next guest has written something called The Genesis of Freemasonry. It's written by David Harrison, and it basically takes us through the journey of the history of English Freemasonry. And David joins me now. Hello, David.
Hi, how are you?
Good to talk to you this afternoon. Why did you decide to look at it from a historical point of view?
Well, the book originally was my PhD. I was studying for a PhD at the University of Liverpool. And when you do a PhD, you've got to do something that no one's really done before.
Right.
So that was just one of the things that was suggested. And I threw myself into it. And it turned out okay in the end, you know. Passed the PhD. Everyone liked it. So it ended up as a book.
That's all right, isn't it? Crikey, do your PhD and then turn it into a book as well. Fantastic.
Yeah, well, you know, I think there's quite a lot of people doing that, you know. Normally, with it depends what the PhD is about, but with my PhD, with it being Freemasonry, it kind of captured the popular interest, really. So people got into it and basically said, well, you know, this is the way you should do it, and try and get it out as a popular book, because it's, you know, Freemasonry, as you just mentioned there, was you know, it's quite a subject that captures people's imaginations, really. You know.
It does, because I think the first thing I would say, what was interesting about the book is I had no idea of its history. I really didn't. So that in itself was very interesting. But also, I think that it seems to me, am I right in saying, is it has changed quite a lot over the years?
Yeah, I'd say in the last 10 years, it's kind of opened its doors, and the United Grand Lodge of England, which is in London, has now got an excellent archive centre and library, and anyone can walk in off the street and go and have a look and check out the you know, the books and the documents and things like that. So, yeah, you know, in one sense, it's gotten very open, and or more open anyway.
More open, exactly. Yeah. That's the point. Well, for those listening, you know, so we don't sort of ruin the book completely, because the information here is huge. It really is. And I had to wear my glasses because it's quite small as well, David. I mean, let's talk about some of the things that we will always see on the insignia, you know, the things like the compasses and the set square. Where did that come from?
Well, the symbolism is something that's always been there for a while, since the early days, really. I'd even say the 16th, 17th century. And when you get to the Civil War period in the 1640s, that's when Freemasonry starts to become really attractive, because you get people joining that aren't Freemasons, you know, as in the operative sense, as in the people that chip away at the stone and build the churches. And these people join it to find a safe haven in a way. You know, there was a guy called Elias Ashmole who joined in 1646. He's the first recorded English Freemason, and he was a royalist soldier, and he appears to have joined out of interest, you know, because he's interested in secret societies and things like that, but also because there's a political edge, and it's like a bridge bringing people together from both sides in a period where there's a lot of religious confusion and political backbiting, and the symbolism is part of that, you know, because the compasses, for example, that means various different things, but in the book I've suggested that the compasses seem to suggest a symbol of eternal life in a way.
Yes, because I mean, the search for immortality, I mean, in fact, strangely, that leads nicely on to one of the things that I've got open here, which was the alchemists and the search for the elixir.
That's right.
And it is something out of Harry Potter that I was reading here, because it was the search for the philosopher's stone. Because was that the basis? So my understanding is that a group of men, because it was only men, obviously, coming together to do secret things, but it also, you know, the background of searching for the elixir of eternal life.
Well, that's right. I mean, going back to Elias Ashmole, he was an alchemist, and but at the same time, he was also a founder member of the Royal Society, and in 1660, and this is a time when this old magic, old science, if you like, is kind of forging itself into the new science. And you've got Sir Isaac Newton, for example. He's at the forefront of the new science, the experimental science, that we know of today. But at the same time, he's also an alchemist. And one of his helpers, one of his assistants, was a guy called Jean Theophilus Desaguliers.
Great name.
Oh, it is, yeah. And he was also a leading Freemason, and he basically forged the Masonic ritual. He modernised everything, the Masonic ritual, during the 1720s. So and there's evidence to suggest that he was also he certainly knew about alchemy, and he was also involved in scientific pursuits. So yeah, this alchemy thing is always there, and the imagery, and the ritual. So yeah, it's all kind of blending together, and Freemasons are at the heart of this.
Yes, no, not at all. The ritual, I think our understanding of somebody who is a Mason is, for those who don't know, like me, that is the thing that seems to come through more than anything. Is that still the case now? I mean, are you a Mason? Am I allowed to ask you even, David?
Yeah, I'm a Mason, yeah.
You are? So is
I am.
Is the ritual still there now that's sort of been handed down over, I mean, you're talking centuries, middle of the 16th century. That's right, yeah. It's something that's, kind of been around within Freemasonry for, as you say, nearly 300 years, really. And obviously this Desaguliers chap, he recreated the ritual, gave it like an 18th century twist, if you like. And but before that, there was rituals there even before that. And all what Desaguliers did was modernise it. But going back to Elias Ashmole, that's one of the things that probably attracted him, because this secrecy, the ritual, the symbols. He was a guy that was searching for the Philosopher's Stone, and this is real stuff. This is what probably inspired the Harry Potter things. Do you think?
Well, yeah. I think it's there's a lot of stuff there that really inspired these modern day stories, throughout the ages you've had similar stories where these secret societies have been plotting things and trying to find things, and it's all based on true life, because in the 16th century, 17th century, there were historical people that were looking for the Philosopher's Stone, and were trying to turn base metal into gold and things like that,
You also talk about the fact that the early part of the 17th century, which is the time we're talking about, when it started up sort of with the Royal Society, Kabbalism, is that the same as Madonna does now? Is that the same thing?
It's probably similar in a way. I mean, that again has been around for quite a while. This belief in the Kabbalah and looking at Hebrew texts and studying various sections of the Old Testament, and it's just another way of looking at things. Really, it's another way of studying the ancient text and the ancient beliefs and trying to get back to basics. So. Yeah, it's similar,
So if a Freemason from the 1600s were to see some of the meetings that were happening now in the 21st century, would they recognise anything?
I think they'll probably recognise something. There's certain elements that have changed. Like, for example, in 1813, there was another revision of the ritual, because during the 18th century there were two Grand Lodges that kind of sprouted off. Rebel Grand Lodges. I mentioned this in the book as well, how there's certain Grand Lodges kind of branch off from each other. But by 1813 they came back together, and that's why today we've got what's called the United Grand Lodge. And at that time they revised the ritual, and both Grand Lodges agreed what they wanted to. They came to a decision. So it still changed over time, but I think they would recognise certain bits, certainly, and the wording of the ritual.
Finally, I was fascinated to know Sir Christopher Wren was the first Grand Master of the Order, and apparently St Paul's And the London Fire Memorial had secret scientific purposes and hidden Masonic meanings.
Yeah, that's right. Regarding Wren, he was down as the first Grand Master of the Order, but that was probably just one of the historians in the early 18th century actually kind of putting his name in to make them look good. But he was definitely a Freemason, and he was a high-ranking one as well. So, there's probably some truth in that. But yeah, the St Paul's, the dome of St Paul's, for example, magnificent, beautiful piece of architecture. Going back to that Jean Theophilus Desaguliers, he actually conducted experiments in St Paul's Cathedral, and the fire monument that was used as well for scientific experiments. So they were like a dual purpose. These new buildings were like temples, and they had a dual purpose, for the new science, and it was like a temple for not just for God, but for the natural philosophy, the new science as well.
Is it still relevant to be a Freemason in this century, do you think?
Well, they've changed a lot, over the centuries, and I think now it's a society that's still undergoing changes, to survive, and they do a lot of charity work and things like that. I think if you take away the Freemasons, there's going to be a big hole in the British charity, really, because they do so much. But apart from that, there's also the historical aspect, which is looking at the archives and preserving all the documents and the old books and things like that that's around. The buildings as well. There's quite a lot of beautiful buildings that these Masonic halls around different parts of the country.
So there's something that should be carried on. David, fascinating. Thank you so much for coming in. It's
thanks for the invite.
Coming into the studio, because I know you're feeling a bit rough today, so it's very kind of you.
I think I've got a bit of flu. Yes,
man flu. David
Man
Harrison,
flu,
thank you so much for joining us. The Genesis of Freemasonry.